Aloha, this is Jason from Lahaina Music, and we're continuing into level 2 in the Ukulele Book. Looks like this. Pick up a copy if you like from our website, lahainamusic.com or lahainamusicmaui.com. Both should get you there. We're starting on page 15, level 2, starting to get into the more interesting stuff now. We've got the basics out of the way in the first 3 videos. If you don't already know your basics, things like how to hold an ukulele, how to balance an ukulele, how to play a basic set of chords on a ukulele, then you might not be ready for this stuff yet. I mean, you feel free to watch the video if you like. But this is where it starts to get a little more interesting, more useful. The stuff I have to teach, I think, is the applications start growing and growing and growing. So, before we really talk about strumming, which is the first part of section 2, more elaborate strumming, we need to emphasize some points. And one of them is, it's really important to focus on strumming gently. We're not trying to frighten anybody away. We're trying to make a gentle, smooth, full tone on a ukulele. Turns out this is an incredible ukulele. I could probably get away with a lot on this in terms of technique. But even if you're on a good uke, even if you're on a okay uke, even if you're on some uke in the middle, you want to take advantage of what it can do. And strumming, learning how to strum well is really important to that. So let's look at strum 1 on page 16, our basic strum. What we're really looking for here is a fanned out fingers on the down strum and smooth wrist rotation, smooth contact on the strings. We're not trying to beat the ukulele. We're not going, that would be so wrong in so many different ways. For one thing, my arm would be moving too much. For 2, my hand would be very rigid and tense. That's not what we want. That's not how you're going to maximize your tone on a ukulele. If you learn to do this, think of like brushing sand off the strings. That's how you're going to get the best tone. If you've got this for strum 1, it makes all the other strums easier. You've already got finger extension and wrist rotation. Let's move to strum 2. Strum 2 is where we subdivide all of these notes. These, you could look at these as quarter notes, strums. If we subdivide, we can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And what we're looking for here is a very light touch on the way up. I'm barely touching with my index finger. I'm just barely touching the strings, the down strums, the accented strum. We're not trying to make our up strum go like that or anything. We're not trying to outdo the down strum or something, although you see people do that. But that's not what we're trying to do. Smooth. Oop, we moved to strum 3 without thinking about it. Strum 2, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up is subdividing perfectly all of those quarter notes into eighth notes. You could look at it that way if you speak music theory. If I slow down a little bit, put a little groove into it, a little bit of a hesitation before the up strum. This is strum 3. And this is what a lot of music is based in. You could describe it as a swing 8th note, sort of a blues groove. It has a little bit of like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Dun, 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 dun. And if you can do this well, you could look at this in 2 ways. You could look at it as down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Or you could look at it as 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3. Or you could look at it as down, ka-ching-ga, down, ka-ching-ga, down, ka-ching-ga, down, ka-ching-ga. That's a really useful way to look at it as we go forward. Ka-ching-ga is a nonsense word. It just basically means keep going. Ka-ching-ga. Ka-ching-ga, ka-ching-ga. That's going to be useful because when we get into more advanced strums on page 17, 18, and 19, all of a sudden understanding what ka-ching-ga means is going to make a big, big difference for you. So again, strum 3, down, ka-ching-ga, down, ka-ching-ga, down, ka-ching-ga, down, ka-ching-ga. So the mistakes people would make here would be one of 2 things. Either strumming too hard, which sometimes comes from not having a good enough ukulele. So you're trying to force more sound out of it than it's able to make, but it just ends up not sounding good. So don't strum too hard. Don't swing your forearm. And you want to obey whatever the tempo is. If you can't stay together with the tempo yet, we talked about this in the previous video, the third video, about playing together with a metronome. That's really important, being able to play at whatever the tempo is, whether it's 60 beats per minute or 90 beats per minute or 115 beats per minute, whatever it is. You need to be able to stay on that metronome. If you can't do that, none of the other strums we're about to teach you are useful at all, really, because you'll just be sort of creating chaos. Let's move to strum 4 now. Strum 4, I call it a folk rock strum. Lots of songs from the 70s written on an acoustic guitar. Sometimes we sort of jokingly call it the Jimmy Buffett strum. I'm sure Jimmy Buffett could play any strum he wants to. But if you wanted to, this really does sound a lot like something you would play for, like down, down, up, down, 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 up, down. Now, a lot of people get confused on this strum. The trick to it really is keep your wrist moving. If I stop touching the strings with my right hand and you just watch my wrist, it's just going the same thing it was doing in strum 2 and strum 3, essentially. It's just going, in fact, it's the same thing it was doing in strum 1. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, nice and smooth. So the trick to strum 4 is sometimes we strum and sometimes we don't strum. So strum 4, we could look at it as going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, but that would be strumming all the time. What if I take some of those strums out? What if I just go down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Now I'll add the next one. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Now I'll add the next one. Down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down. Now this strum has a lot of advantages. It makes things sound more interesting, but it has some downsides too. The downside is if you play that on every single song will end up sounding alike, and you might as well have just stuck with strum 3. Because not every song is supposed to have a folk rock strum. Some people call this an island strum or a Hawaiian strum, and you can call it that if you want to. But it's not really limited to that. It's really more of a. I mean, I learned this way before I ever got out to Maui. Just my second guitar lesson, I think I learned this strum. Another way to do this, because most people don't learn, like from an engineering point of view, like to think 1, 2, and 3, and 4, which is the way like a music major would probably learn it. Down, down, up, down is a little more casual. But most of us are wired for language. So if we think of it as, if you look at the book on page 17 on strum 4, you'll see that last line in the strum 4 section says a sentence, and the sentence is a specific rhythm, and it says, I will play the uke, I will play the uke, and I will play the uke, I will play the uke, and that's the rhythm of it. So the trick is just keep your hand rotating, down, up, 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 nice and smoothly, and say that sentence at the same time. That's how you make the rhythm. I will play the uke, I will play the uke, I will play the uke, like that. Okay, let's move on to strum 5. Strum 5, let's go back to our basic pattern, which is always going to be nice and smooth, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, you could look at this as strum 2, for example, right now, or strum 3, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, where we get that little groove, the swing 8th note it's caused. So there's a little hesitation after the down strum, before the up strum. Now, if we're using this as a template, and remember how we talked about Ka-Jin-ga? We could go 1 Ka-Jin-ga, 2 Ka-Jin-ga, 3 Ka-Jin-ga, 4 Ka-Jin-ga. Now what we're going to do is, instead of counting those numbers, we're going to use a thumb pluck. Pluck, Ka-Jin-ga, pluck, Ka-Jin-ga, pluck, Ka-Jin-ga, pluck, Ka-Jin-ga. So what's the pluck? The pluck is where you just barely touch that top string, the number 4 string. This ukulele has a low G on it, but it works the same way if you have a high G. It's just that you have that note instead of that note. So it would sound like if you had a high G. The strum mechanics work the same way though. I don't know if that's confusing if you don't know about the difference between high G and low G. This uke is strung with a low G, so that has a lower pitch than that. A lot of other ukuleles have a high G, like this guy, for example, versus so anyway, high G, low G, but the strums are the same. Okay, let's look at strum 5 here. So the pluck, the motion we're looking for in the pluck is we want to touch the string and rotate our wrist downward still. The reason that's important is because, again, hopefully you've developed this smooth rotation of your wrist, a smooth extension of your fingers. That's just as a basic pattern. Once you get this into muscle memory in strum 1, 2, and 3, then you can start tackling the items on strum on page 17. So once you've got this part down, your thumb pluck would just look like this. It's not that I'm moving my thumb so much, it's that I'm moving my whole wrist. And it pulls my thumb past the string and away, because it rotates away, right? So that's how I get just one string instead of all of that. I just want one string. So we've got pluck, ka-jin-ga, pluck, ka-jin-ga, pluck, ka-jin-ga, pluck, ka-jin-ga, pluck, ka-jin-ga, pluck, ka-jin-ga. So this is good for lots of different kinds of music. You could use it for everything from John Denver to Bob Marley, and a lot of other stuff too. It creates an offbeat strum, so it's a little more interesting to listen to. I'm going to switch back to strum 3 for a moment. So strum 3, by comparison, sort of becomes like la 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 la. It's very kind of monotonous sounding. Whereas the strum 5, the pluck strum, gives it that little more interesting feel. And that's really, really useful, even if you're just playing simple chords. I mean, right now I'm doing like basic level chords, C, A minor, F, and G7. But it sounds a lot better because I've adapted to this strum. And I'm not overplaying the pluck, I'm not going, twang. Just nice and gentle and smooth. The trick to all of these things are staying smooth and being able to play the strum at whatever the tempo is. I think we'll break this video for now. The next video will continue on page 17 with strums 6 and 7. So hopefully this is useful, and aloha.